All right, maybe we can just go ahead and get started. Before we get into the PO knowledge sharing piece, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay. Yes, okay. Julie?
I don't know, in the name of the transparency and communication from the meeting that was in here just before, you may have, there's been a lot of talk about re-architecturing at the WOLFcon, and in the session beforehand, apparently there's a paper or the concept for, and I think the name is application formalization process. And the announcement is just like, you know, there's talks of like, essentially we really need to focus on re-architecturing Folio so that it's much easier to develop in it. And you know, those talks like, well, we just need to do it. I did drop the question, like, okay, so what development do we drop now so that we do that instead? But it's just like the announcement, like I'm sure there'll be more information out there coming, but it seems to be a trend that maybe our prioritizations in what programming work gets done will shift, if not within the teams that we're working with now, but at least within the project as a whole. FYI.
Well, that the concept of Folio now is changing.
So Steph said, isn't that the concept of Folio generally, that it's always changing and shifting? Yes, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and I don't
We
know
need to speak in the mic because of people up here.
I don't know about other teams, but I'm pretty sure a lot of us get kind of directives of things we have to do pretty much every release, whether it's upgrading certain things, or we're going to change this piece of authentication, or we're going to, you know, change the policy around this or that. And so we keep up with those. I would hope if there's some giant re-architecting that happens, that it's people that know a whole lot more than me and will lay it out. And if the individual dev teams that are working on functional areas have to do stuff, they would lay that out really clearly for us.
okay.
Yeah, because the re-architecture stuff is super interesting, and you know, if you listen to what they're talking about, it definitely seems like there's going to be a redistribution of or modules throughout applications. Have the product owners started talking? Have we product owners started talking about how that might impact the specific things that we are owning, and are we going to continue to own the same things, all that stuff?
It's started right now.
Yeah, it's just a proposal right now. So it, just like Julie said, it's a matter of understanding and what the goals are, objectives, and how we make this work.
So I've been to one of those architecture sessions, and I asked the exact same question around features, because many of you, and including my institution, want features dropped into the product, and we're using teams to do that. I think I think we need to accept the re-architecture. If they do what they're describing, which is kind of big, I mean, you'd know more than I would. I don't think you're going to get some of the features you want in the timeframes you want. And I asked the question, and I know it's a very hard thing to do. I'm a developer, and as a project manager, you ask the question, but how long do they estimate this take? And I know you're estimating a piece of string, but I guess the question is to understand it. I think the impact they're talking about is actually so large. It's not like writing the list app or something, a tax on the side. This is redoing the way we work. And some of the teams aren't going to work the way you work anymore, by the way they do. And I think that means almost your backlog is not going to be the same. Now, I don't know what that means for the constituencies that you are supporting and for the features that you are promising in a time frame. I think it's going to shift.
I have a hard time imagining it happening in less than 2 years. But that's just gut level response to it.
I think I saw your hand raised.
I mean, I'd agree with with what's just been said. I think that the thing that's on my mind as well is that as I understand the proposals, and I wasn't able to go to these application session today. I did go to the platform session yesterday, and those two sessions really need to be seen as one part. You can, I think, watch Vince do some presentations to the TC. If you haven't seen those already, you might be, and you want to kind of get a better grip on some of that thinking. Although I thought the platform presentation yesterday or the day before yesterday was probably a cleaner and more concise presentation than it gave to Tech Council, where he expanded, I think, quite a bit. But the thing that strikes me is, in terms of structure, is not just like the fact that like there'll be work at the architectural level to and the organizational level, but at the architectural level to make the technical changes, but that at the moment, one of the challenges they're identifying, one of the challenges we have, is the degree to which our so-called modular apps are, or modules are completely interrelated and dependent on each other. And we have a whole pile of dependencies that go right up the stack. And if you install one, then you find you have to install another, and then another, and another, and then you get the whole of Folio. And even if you just want to run one module, you've got the whole of Folio. And that's one of the things they're trying to break, but that has to be done at every level. It can't we will need to look at the work that we need to do to continue to support the integrations that the users need, while avoiding making that such a hard dependency that you can't run one module without the other. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for us and our teams, as well as that's work that will follow, I think, from the design being agreed. So I think it's going to go down the stack. And it's going to be very mental to get there, I think. So it's really hot outside.
But worse than yesterday? Feels worse than yesterday? Because last night
When we went out, a colleague from Germany commented, because when we literally got out the door and there was this, it was so windy from this rush of wind, but it doesn't cool you. And he commented, he said, now I know how chips feel when they go when they get put in the oven. So is it worse than that, or not as worse as that?
It's bad, yeah.
Not as bad yet. Yeah, it's not even lunchtime yet here, so it's got time to get.
Welcome to Chicago in August.
Yeah.
I went to Starbucks, as you guys know, this morning. I think I went out. Ryan, when did I see you? What, 7 a.m.?
Yeah.
It was 81, but feels like 91. I can't translate it into, is it Fahrenheit, Celsius?
86 is 30 degrees.
Okay.
So, but now we are pretty used to this number.
Yeah, it was not pretty out there. But I had to make it to Starbucks because yesterday I had a headache. And yeah, Dennis. I went to Starbucks and the headache went away. It's bad. It's really bad. So folks, thanks for coming. It's actually nice to see a lot of you that I see, through Slack all the time. And we have these PO meetings every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, or 11 a.m. Eastern time. So it's actually great to see you. And it's been nice to hang out or have meetings or sessions with Julie and Anne Marie and others. And it's been nice to see Owen and Glenn, from time to time, but it's awesome. So we were in College Station a couple of years ago. Kate did a PO knowledge sharing, and I think we collected a bunch of questions, and she was far more, as she always is, far more organized than I was in getting it together beforehand. So I think I asked everyone to just write their questions and comments on a piece of paper. Thank you. And I think, and what we did in College Station a couple of years ago was we just picked some questions and answered as many of those questions or responded to as many of the comments as many as we could with the time we have, which right now is about 40 minutes. So that's what we're gonna do today. Now, I thought I would just, get a bag, pick something out, but as I looked through the questions and comments, it seemed like there were some themes. So I'm just gonna go by the themes I saw. The first one I'm gonna actually speak to is actually kind of related to what Julie kicked things off with. Dennis, I think it's okay to say who wrote what. But Dennis actually made a suggestion. He said, let's have more guest speakers for the PO meetings, including module release, evolution, which is kind of what we're talking about with the platform re-architecture and all that, bib frame impact, and ways to support collaboration. I would say that many of us would agree with that, right? To try to get more speakers in those areas. Do you have any other suggestions, any other topics that we should try to recruit speakers for? Joe?
I think there's tremendous value in occasionally sticking our heads up and taking a look at the broader market, just kind of a state of the space, what's going on. Because we got so heads down in folio world, sometimes it's important to know what are other people doing, what are other people talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I like Jeremy.
I noticed something in the TC that came up a lot was people expressing a lot of confusion over the module evaluation process, and we talked about wanting to come to you folks and talk about that. So that's maybe an idea.
And then you could come to the PO meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Because you actually have a video. You made a video about the module evaluation process.
We opted for the video instead, and maybe that's fine. But I guess it just occurred to me that we had talked about wanting to combine CC.
Okay. So maybe it's more TCPO meeting. See if we can have a combined TCPO meeting sometimes, because it's at the same time. Dennis.
Just a thought on that is that for some of these major initiatives, maybe it's a more sort of systematic knowledge transfer, not just one meeting that they show up and speak at, but we need to kind of keep an eye on these things as they evolve. So
maybe something scheduled, like a recurring, like TCPO.
or a portion of the meeting, something is dedicated to like knowledge transfer for these major initiatives that will, as everyone has sort of described, have a major impact on on the work we're doing and how we need to be thinking about the work we're doing and planning.
Yeah. So just always making time for it in the meetings. Yeah.
I mean, linked to that, because I think it's always like trying to schedule things like long term is always hard. Maybe it can be like, there's a bucket list of things that we need to look at, and that it's less. We know it 6 months in advance when it'll take place, or it has to take place every 6 months. But meetings, if some point it's like we don't have a topic for the next meeting. What's the topic we haven't heard of since the longest? Okay, then we need to get someone or something and just get an update of who's heard what in this space.
Yeah,
because the reality also, we're getting so much information that smaller bits over time
makes a big difference.
Helpful.
Yeah. So who wants to start this list? So, say that again, Tom. I could. Well, actually, I could start it, but I definitely need some help with it too.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I need to prepare an overview for my local folks anyway.
Yeah.
The topics around WOLFcon, I'm happy to share it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Joe's thoughts about market intelligence. What would be some recommendations for sessions related to market intelligence? Or how would we, hey, do we do a meeting and say, hey, I've learned this about, what's going on with AI, or this is what's going on with resource sharing, or et cetera. I mean, what would be your recommendation for how to have a meeting where we learn about what's happening outside of our world of folio? Because I think that's great. I mean, it's your key thing about being a product owner, product manager is not, being your corner here. You have to talk to other people and do research beyond what's happening in the community. So I actually think it's valuable point that Joe made there. And I think Owen has an idea, since it took me a while to get to my point, sort of, kind of.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I definitely look at when we're developing functionality, I go out and research what, as far as I can, what other products are doing in the same space right now, and where documentation is available online, I review that and read through it, but of course, one of the most valuable things is I talk to libraries who are implementing Folio and say, well, what does your current system do, or what does your old system do, as well as what you need us to do. And I think actually getting in people, they don't need to be Folio implementers, getting in people who do this work day in, day out with other systems or their own systems or however they're working, to say, like, this is what we do, these are the challenges we face. These are not, like, that will give us, that I think is a really healthy thing to do. And we speak to people in the Folio community, and that gives us a particular perspective, but we could speak to people from outside that community using other products, and it will give us new and different perspectives.
We'll go first.
Sorry, I'm pretty new to this, so maybe I'm not sure if this is a good suggestion, but in my regular job, which is a director of IT operations, I speak a lot of vendors. Right now, most of them are sales people, and they're annoying. Okay, to be honest, like, you know, far too many copies talking crap all day. It's like, come on, man, just give me real stuff. But maybe what you could do is identify, rather than doing all the research yourself, because I think all of you are kind of busy, I imagine. Maybe in thinking about really tapping the community of people doing my style of role, other roles of contacts, and inviting a couple things to come and demo something. So you have a session, maybe this would, if you meet every week, that's a lot of meetings. Maybe you have one meeting a month where you, one or two guest speakers, they come in from a particular product, right? And they just demo the product or demo some feature of the product, something that is interesting to you, your constituency, that could be a right thing. So example I'm just looking at now is we've got a session on maybe potential search across apps or something. You know, maybe there's a contact in the community that knows somebody from, say, Atlassian. Good example. They've got a search thing, it searches the entire Jira thing. We've all used Jira, you know what it looks like. And then maybe they've got a UX person and they come in and talk about that for 20 minutes or half an hour. You know, and that, you know, for example, and there could be things in AI or other things as well that you guys are looking at. And I'm sure in the entire Folio community, there's enough people who know people who could then, you know, without you having to do all the work yourself. What I'm trying to say is doing less work and then still getting something out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the topics would be, but there's an example. And salespeople always love to demo their stuff, right? You know, if you get the right companies and stuff like that. There are some interesting things I've sat in that have been useful to us in my context as well, even though the product, like an example, when I told Clarivate, hey, Voyager's there, killing the contract. It was a pretty difficult meeting. They said, oh, well, we still want to demo to you our stack. And I said, actually, I'm interested, for example. And so, you know, I remember meeting sometime and they're going to demo their stuff, thinking, you know, look at the sale they want. But it'll be interesting to learn what they're doing and how they're approaching certain things, integrations or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We'll need to set up a fake library.
We are very.
I was gonna say, just echoing what Owen said, I think there's lots of people in the community, especially like people who are implementing currently, the implementers group that are on other systems presumably that know a lot about those systems, whether it's the whole system or the functional areas that we represent. Like, I know I'm relatively new, and probably new to this meeting, but like I've worked in a consortium with Alma and Primo and I've worked on Summon and Zero Solutions, and I know how they work. That could be maybe a year out. But like, there's tons of other people, and you just, you know, there's people going live all the time that have just gotten out of these systems and using the community, just, you know, anyone have experience in Alma circulation or WMS circulation, pick up specific things and see if they become more, right, talk about it at least in the Slack.
Yeah. Those are all great ideas that we can use for kind of getting that intelligence. And it might be that we just need to grab a list of those things that we wanted
Sorry.
No, it's all right, I'm getting my Fitbit steps in, but these are all great ideas.
Might be really lame, but the market research that I've been doing recently, because there are a lot, as a developer, I get very siloed into like certain things, and so there's some areas where it's like I need to learn about this real fast, and I know nothing about it. And I will tell you that a 45-minute conversation with ChatGPT can teach you a lot about a certain market, like what products are out there, and I'm just full disclosure, I've had a lot of these conversations with ChatGPT recently.
That says a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just as a caveat to that, after the session this morning, I asked ChatGPT to give me a mark record for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy paperback by Douglas Adams, and it did a pretty convincing job, but it doesn't hold up to close scrutiny. So a lot of it was right, but for example, it had the wrong publication date, it had the wrong ISBN for the publisher it quoted. I'm not even sure the publisher it quotes. I don't think the publisher it quoted actually publishes Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in any format. So yeah, and the problem there is like, in that case, I can tell you what the problems are, but yeah.
So, just to clarify, I kind of recommend it as like a starting place, right? Just to kind of get some stuff out there to follow up on.
I mean, I've got 2 teenagers. I'm very aware of it as a start.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, my advice would be just, don't pay attention to any of the wrong stuff.
You know, the ISBN question.
No. I thought they might get it wrong, but the ISBN was correct for the paper version of a Penguin version of the Hitchhiker's Guide, but not the imaginary or version of
There you go. Yeah. So this actually is a great transition from Dennis's question to questions that several folks had about community engagement as far as the POs and with other areas of the community. So I don't know, I should probably know who wrote this question. I think I know it's either Yana or Martina, but how can SIG conveners and POs support each other? So we started talking about, the types of information we want shared in our meetings, whether it's market intelligence or what's happening, as far as architectural, module evaluations, BibFrame, etc. So what are our thoughts about how can SIG conveners and POs support each other? Julie.
So I think one of the challenges, and that was in our tips earlier on, is from a PO perspective, okay, maybe one step back. So requirements and refining them so they can get developed. That phase can be really, really long and complicated, depending on how big or the feature. Ideally, customers, for lack of a better word, you talk with them and you develop it. What if you're struggling getting that input, in a very broad fashion? One tip from a previous meeting was that for the UATs is that, we as POs have to be much more proactive getting that feedback. And so I can imagine, and I don't know the details how, but as a convener, you are, supporting, organizing the cheerleading. And it's probably quite a thankless job because, then people know the answers and it's like you're speaking into the void, but taking on this role in the longer of like, we need input from libraries somehow. And unfortunately, but more we've noticed, just putting, hey, we'll talk about this on this day is not enough. It's being much more proactive, reaching out to them, or be it, for example, there was one, if we've heard somehow, okay, this is a feature that's being refined on now. Who are the libraries that are really interested in this? and making sure that their representatives get added to a meeting where it can be discussed or presented. Just examples, but I think, sorry, long story short, owning this proactive, because it's going to have to be proactive. I think that's what we've seen. Dragging the interested people, libraries into the meetings so that they so that we can get the inputs we need.
So, I mean, one thing I'd say is, from my perspective, is Martina does an amazing job as SIG convener, along with the other Martina for ERM, and I'm really appreciative of it because all of the organisation and for that happens without me having to worry about it, and then I turn up, and so people do get invited if we need specific topics. Everything happens. Everything, I just worry about the product, and that is brilliant. Something that I've written a question for this, so I'm kind of skipping to it a little, but I'd like to think about it is what the SIGs can do to work outside their synchronous meetings. So what I find more difficult is getting asynchronous feedback. If I post, for instance, something on Slack channel, then I'm unlikely to get a huge amount of engagement on it. I mean, not non-existent engagement, but and I'd really like to see that more. And I was talking to Terence, I was really struck by Terence's comment in the plenary on Tuesday, Wednesday. Where are we today?
Monday. It was Tuesday. Sorry.
About like the difficulties of engaging if you're outside, if the Eastern time zones working day, or even an extended Eastern working day, is just the middle of your night. And the main way I get input for my products is through those SIG discussions, plus then any dedicated discussions that I set up outside that. And I would love to not be excluding people who can't make that time slot, and that goes across all my products. And that happens. Like, so we've had a couple of ERM sessions on e-holdings stuff, and it's just that a lot of the e-holdings people, users, just don't come to that SIG, and that's not like probably most of the time they're quite happy with that. But when we really want to get that input, we have a really limited pool of information to draw on, and I don't want them to force them to come along to the SIG. I just want a way of getting them to have the input.
Can I please first elaborate on my question about how we should support each other? It was born out of the session we had earlier, where SIG conveners had a little ramble about how we feel about SIGs are going now, and how it's, and not to judge or to put fault on anyone. It's just how can we make it better to make it very passive SIG participation more active, for how can we this was a bit like, this is where I'm coming from, and all your input is appreciated, and if you have any ideas, you go to your SIG conveners, and we are absolutely open. Please excuse if I am a bit rude in my expression now. Sometimes I would wish for more dialogue between POs and SIG conveners, or maybe because most of the time I don't know where to put what to put on my agenda. Yeah, we have a lot of open discussion round sessions, and they are really helpful for implementers and to get their burdens unload. it or something. But I don't think we are aiming for the goal of refinement here, because that is not being done by having open discussion rounds, but having scheduled topics, prepared topics as well. When you come, they're always prepared. Please don't get me wrong there. I just want to say that we are not working right now to the goal to refine, because the agendas are mostly empty. And if the role of the convener has to change for that, we have to discuss that as well. Because for now, we are only doing all the organizational stuff, putting together agendas and so on. So we are not, we do not have the official task to, and I know a lot of us are going over that. So we are not doing official things, but doing other stuff as well. But I would like to talk about that then, and get your guidance as well, because I'm not trained to do PO work and or parts of them, so of it, and this is why I'm here as well, because it said in the description interested in PO work. I am interested in how I can, and Julie, you did a lot to involve the SIG in PO work. I think that is a good step. Sorry, I'm rambling. And
No, you're great. You're great. You're great.
so I had to start making a list because I want to circle back to what Julie said a minute ago. But before that, one thing I'll say is that NMSIG has, it was I'd say there's 6 or 7 now POs that are associated with NMSIG. And so it's a huge area, and it's a huge number of POs. And one of the things we've done is we have a private Slack channel that's for MMSIG planning, where we have the 2 conveners and all of the POs, where we can talk about topics, we can talk about questions, and plan, and also kind of pain points can come up and we can have discussions about them. So that's been helpful for us. The most frustrating thing for me about SIGs is the bigger they get, the more quiet everybody gets. And that is so damn frustrating. And I know, I understand why, but it's incredibly frustrating. And Felix, who is probably one of the kindest men that exists on the planet, having to beg somebody to take notes every week is so frustrating to me. Talk about the lowest barrier to entry, easiest thing that somebody new to a meeting could do is just hit edit on the wiki and start typing, and somebody will help you if you get stuck. As far as people helping the conveners helping the product owners, I'm not thinking about it so much in the context of cheerleading, but helping when they're or helping to I don't know, helping but not hurting when there are hard decisions that have to be made and communicated. When not as much can get done in a release as you hoped, or we have to put this off for 2 releases because there's something else that it's dependent on that's not ready. I think is a really good thing for the SIG conveners. I think the SIG conveners helping with soliciting people, not only for feedback on specific functionality, making sure that we've got the SMEs that are interested in particular things, but also documentation. I can write documentation from the product owner point of view, but to me, the better documentation and the better examples come from y'all and what you're doing day to day with the stuff that we've tried to build for you. And your examples and your description of it, I think is always going to be better. And so if the POs can at least get the requirements clearly documented and then get help with the official documentation and with the tips and tricks, I think that can be really helpful. Another area that Laura And MMSIG has been begging people to help with the official MM related documentation for inventory, import, export, bulk edit, and getting nowhere in the last few weeks, and can be really frustrating. And then one last one, this one is super personal. I'm putting myself out there. A couple months ago, we suspended temporarily the data import subgroup meetings. And I sent a note out to MM and to the data import subgroup. And it did not go over well. How can you make this decision on your own? We've never done anything like this. Well, data export's been suspended for a couple of years now, so I don't quite know why we've never done this. It would have been good to have a little bit more backup on that, or not be the bad guy in those conversations all the time.
Before I just want to say something. It's from my perspective. So when I first joined Folio, we were just building these apps, whether it was the ERM apps that Owen's building, e-holdings, acquisitions, data import, still forming and norming on inventory. And so SIGs had a different role at that time. Now we're 6 years in. We've got Chalmers, who's been on Folio for four years. Maybe we need to look at the relationship of SIGs and POs a bit differently, because we have libraries that are actively using it. We're not necessarily building new apps and stuff like that. So maybe it's just another way, we just need to look at the relationship a bit differently. For one, maybe we don't need to meet weekly. I think some SIGs meet weekly. Maybe it's worth meeting every other week or once a month for the time being. Like Emery said, maybe there's, the opportunity to have collaboration with the POs to kind of figure out what their needs are. I don't know if Emery, I'm sorry if I forgot everything you said there, but helping with UAT with scenarios are very important. Maybe even having smaller meetings where it's just a small group that get together to hammer out some scenarios, whether it's what the heck I'm doing with authority control or what's going on with bib frame or something like that. Those are areas that can be really helpful. Okay. So Jeremy, Julie, Tom, I'm going to pass it to Julie first. Jeremy, can you then pass it to Tom? Then Tom, pass it to Jan.
It's just wrapping up a lot of what Anne-Marie said. And this is stepping away from what can the convener do, because I also don't want it like the convener should be doing everything. Topics I think you brought up, Anne-Marie, was just generally how can SIG members, or to get away maybe from the concept of SIG, which was indeed originally just providing requirements, to maintaining the product and that it's, as there was talk, I think, how can we get more developers on board? I also feel the general topic of this project is how can we get, for lack of a better word, normal people, normal people, like just for doing a lot of heavy lifting there, helping with documentation, we're doing these bits and bobs here and there that are you don't need super skills, you don't need to be part-time on here, but it still generally help to keep the product going generally. And then ideally, so that we don't have to beg for people to help every single time. And just a note to self to figure out, maybe asking to do this from the, for lack of a better analogy, from the bottom upwards, like from the SIG, but it's rather maybe contacting people who have managerial roles or even higher to say, like, we need you guys to let your people spend a couple hours a week every so often to help with these things. They don't need any special skills, but they just need to care and regularly turn up and help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like trying to wrap my mind around product ownership in general. And so I'm trying to gauge, maybe just a culture of the product ownership between the SIG conveners and the product owner. It's my question to all of y'all is, do you ever, as product owners, meet one-on-one with your SIG conveners to like pregame meetings or anything like that? I've seen some yeses. Because that would make me feel better, like even just convening the SIG, and I'm thinking, I don't want to, the first time he and I talk, about what's going on, to be like right there in front of everybody else, so, anyway, and so it seems like sometimes that's a good idea.
Oh, that's all the time. Good
Okay.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's gone. I meet with Martina every Monday, and we have a ERM SIG every other week. And the first thing on the agenda is always the agenda for the ERM SIG. There are other people in the meeting, and we discuss other things in terms of strategy, but that's like a primary thing we do every week. Similarly with open access, I meet with convener fortnightly, and we have those, like talking about the regularity of SIGs. There's no funded development OA at the moment. There's no point in us having a weekly meeting, but we meet every month. Again, we meet fortnightly to make sure that we're on track to have an agenda for that meeting and what that should be and what our priorities are. So absolutely, I would see that as essential.
I was gonna say, I do like Anne-Marie's idea of having that private Slack channel with the SIG conveners and the POs, because then you can talk about topics that are going on and SIG outside of it. One thing I was gonna mention is, it's kind of along the same lines as the user acceptance testing. I know with data import, and I've been, or what this too, I'm also talking about requests. I try to carve out time to do it, and I never have time. It's like, okay, I'll do it this hour. Nope, that got eaten up by something else. Having it at the meeting was a life changer. Just even having somebody randomly walking through, doing every step, and everyone can watch it is a scheduled time. I have to be there. It gets it done. Along the same lines, like especially like RA SIG, as you said, like the bigger the SIG gets, the more people get quiet. And there's been so many working groups of SIGs that I'm on where there's like 3 people talking, and admittedly I'm one of them because I have a big mouth. And I really hate this when Cornell does this to us, but it's very effective. Is they throw people in working groups. They will say, here's a topic. 4 of you are each going to go on a private Zoom group. I want you to discuss it. One person reports it back. And then you're going to go over all the results as a larger group. And it forces people out of their shells. It forces them to interact with other people, and then you're getting more ideas out. So it's kind of something I thought maybe,
That's great, dude.
I think that's a good thing. And we have that. I think Cornelia and I am in the PO Circ channel, but I felt a bit I should not. I wouldn't. Yeah. How should I say? So it is. It's not my task for now to participate in this manner. So, and I don't need an invitation to talk, because that's, I like talking, even though it's not my first language. But what I wanted to say is, I think these ideas are all really, really good, but we have to make it more formal. And also the idea of involving SIG members is always a matter of being prepared well, because if you're not prepared well or give clear instructions, and that is also something I want to extend to the UTAs,
UATs.
Sorry. And because I told the research executive, watch out for the the tests. But they they are fully prepared to watch out, but that never came, or did not. I mean, for nobody probably, but I hope you understand what I wanted to say. It is necessary to be prepared and have clear structure for for the SIG. Because otherwise nobody will participate or will know what you're talking about.
So to that very quickly, like especially so I think in the case of RA, right, we're seeing there's hyping SIGs generally, and each SIG is a little different. And I know that, you know, in the case of circulation, I think, you know, we also have challenges where it's a mix of, you know, there is active development, but not maybe necessarily enough to always cover nearly every meeting with new contents to discuss accordingly. I'm also to blame, right? Because I know in my area, because of time, I do a lot of maintenance, but very few new stuff. And some of the new stuff is more like just copying the same functionality. And I've made a clear decision to not go through the traditional whole refinement process, because I don't want people to suggest completely new ways of doing it when we don't have the capacity and that's not the right thing for that product. So there's also, I think, you know, I think what I'm saying for, in your case, the difficulties that you're experiencing is probably because of where we're at in the development of circulation at this point. It's, or,
sorry, because we only have a few minutes left. And I think you guys, we could probably have another discussion about the way SIGs and POs could work together. I think there were some good ideas that came out of it. And there's probably more, huh?
Get the conveners to be a guest of PO.
We could have, yeah, have conveners do it. Maybe it's one-on-one to just kind of hash out with the POs that you're working with how to work better together, because we're all at a different we're all at different stages of our development. So for example, with eHoldings, it's basically on maintenance mode. Sorry, Zoe, but it's basically on maintenance mode there. So I won't have much to say in the ERM subgroup, aside from when, you know, Martina reaches out to me or Owen reaches out to me and says, hey, there's some questions, you need to answer them. That's probably it. But there may be other groups that are more in the development mode, where that connection, collaboration, and discussion with the SIGs on how to work together is important. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. So I'm looking through the list here. There were some questions about JIRA. Everyone loves JIRA, right? So I think we'll just have a session about JIRA. I know Anne-Marie did an overview for some new POs about JIRA, and it sounds like we should just schedule another one to go through those questions, because it depends. I mean, Terrence, you asked the question on you know, the uses of JIRA. Yeah, it depends. And then there was a question about how helpful is knowing or learning formal PM or PO methodologies for being a PO. It's a great question. I don't think you need to know. I think we are offering on-the-job training here. And I do think it's beneficial. I know I went through you know, certified Scrum product owner training. I know Joe has, and I know a few other folks, Steph has, and other folks have too. I find it beneficial. I mean, in learning those standards, rules, processes, all that. It's all great. Joining like scrumalliance.org and other places like that will give you a good understanding of what we're doing. So I do recommend, you know, taking courses if you can, if you have the opportunity to do that, or going to websites like I just described. You don't have to know it. You're going to learn it. You're just going to be thrown in, including you, Zorin.
That was the question.
Oh, I just want to add to that. I think it was a good year before I did any formal PO training. And I mean, I don't know how successful or unsuccessful my first development efforts were, but we got things released and they were released on time. So, I mean, done is good, right?
Thank you, Steph. Exactly.
This is really short, I promise you. So the idea of product owner, I never had. When I first came over from YVP to EBSCO for Folio, my job was supposed to be completely different from what it turned into. And at that point, Kate was our Kalila.
No, there's only one Kate.
She showed me. She showed me how to write a story. Given blah blah blah, when blah blah blah, then blah blah blah. And that was basically the training that I got. And that got me through the first iteration of tags. So
You did the same thing again, right?
All right, Mr. Joe.
And I'll just add that I had the great fortune of getting mentored under Dennis, who taught me those things, but also added the additional tip. Always think from the user's perspective. So if you're always thinking about the user, what the user's going through, and you're following that format, you're 90% of the way there.
That is such a good point.
Yeah.
Especially because we talked to developers.
So I wanted to just address this final question, and I'm gonna actually combine it. There was a question about what are the mini Mac skills you need to become a PO? And then there was a question about, for the product owner, what is the right balance between listening and guiding? So I think if anyone's been a PO for years, they're tied together here in my mind. So this is just my take. The skills you need, you need to listen. You need to be open-minded. You need to be okay with folks challenging what you are thinking and what you're doing. You can't be afraid to ask questions. I have an MLS. I avoided cataloging like it was like something infectious. Like I was like, I just avoided it. I did user experience, information design. I took a database management class. I just avoided it. And then one day Harry said, your team has to take on work. And I was like, doggone it. But it was good. I did say doggone it. I probably said a few other words too, but it was good because, all right, great. Because I've been in the world of e-holdings for years. I've been working on the EBSCO KB for over 10 years. I know it I know it. So, so it was great to get out of that and then say, okay, I'm going to learn this new thing that I'm afraid of, because I am afraid of Mark. And I'm going to ask questions, and they're going to be silly probably to some of the catalogers, but it's okay, because that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm a product owner. I ask questions. I also tell folks that, to me, being a product owner, product manager, whatever you want to call us, is like doing a reference interview. That's what I do. That I learn from these folks that I'm talking to. I then, seek out additional resources or additional information. And then I say, based on what I'm hearing, I think this is what you're looking for. But then I have to communicate that to my developers, who may not have a clue what I'm talking about, because they may not understand the library space, or maybe understand it on the fringes here. I have to speak in their language, but I can't say the same thing to Gar, or I can't say the same thing to Marie from Chalmers or whoever else. I can't talk that same language. And so you have to learn your audience and how you have to understand who you're communicating to. You can't communicate, well, we're changing, subfield B and E to someone who has no clue what Mark is. So you have to understand how you communicate. Our role is also a little bit different. I shouldn't have gone over, because we talk at a very high level to many people, and then we got to talk really low. It's a lot of context switching. So I don't know if I spoke specifically. So those are the skills I think you need as a product owner. And that's also why the listening, guiding piece is important, because you might be guiding people, but hopefully it's based on what you've learned and understand from talking to folks. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say. I know it's lunchtime, so we can stop here. Dennis is gonna be the last word.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take that from anyone, but I think it's worth saying that you oftentimes get into this product ownership role, maybe because you have expertise or experience in the area. And I do think one of the key things about being a PO is being able to recognize your bias and acknowledging your bias, because you are not building the application for yourself. Even if you think you know the best way to do it, the idea of listening, you can only really listen to users if you recognize your bias and try and control for it. So once you know what you're biased towards, I think understanding that allows you to open up and listen to feedback.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody who's online. Have a good rest of your WOLFcon. And for those who are here, have a great lunch.